24 minutes before 11 o'clock. Thank you for tuning in. So I think it was just yesterday I was driving behind one of those motorhomes, and on the back of the motorhome there was a map of the United States, and about 2/3 of those states were colored in with like stickers or something, right? To indicate that these people had visited those states.
Oh, okay.
Well, it's one thing to go to a state. It's another thing to really, really experience that state. I mean, even a city is hard to really say you know the city just because you passed through it, right? Mm-hmm. So I don't know. There should be another map that says, maybe there's a flag that says not only did I pass through it, but I lived here for 2 years. That that would be a better thing. I think a lot of times we think that about a lot of things. Like, a good example is Orlando. A lot of people go to Disney and they say, "Oh, I've been to Orlando." A lot of people go to New York and they say, "Oh, I've been to New York." They don't really know New York. I like when I've gone places, I like to spend at least like 3 nights in the place and then go out into the actual town and see what it's like, right? To
immersion.
But can you imagine actually moving to some place like South Korea? Mm-hmm. Our next guest did, and we only have ourselves or maybe our culture to use as a control, I guess, to have something to compare other things to. And so it's interesting to hear what Cheryl Pallant experienced, and she put it in this wonderfully titled book. It's a wonderful book, but it's just a wonderful choice of titles. Ginseng Tango is the name of the book. It's a travel memoir of South Korea. Cheryl Pallant is a poet, a dancer, a healer. Which one doesn't belong there, right? Or does poetry heal us? She teaches dance and writing at the University of Richmond, and she's on the phone. Good morning, Cheryl. Nice to have you on the show.
Good morning, Larry. Good morning, Robin. Thanks for having me on.
Good morning.
How long were you in South Korea?
I was there 11 months.
That's a long time.
It's a long time.
Can you tell us?
And it could have been longer.
And okay, so why was it 11 months, and why wasn't it longer?
Well, I went over there for work, so I was accepted to teach at Kim Young University, which is in the very most south part of South Korea, and I accepted a year-long position, and so that's essentially 9 months with 2 months in between. And they were ready for me to stay on for another year or another year after that. But I had already decided that 11 months was good enough, and it was time to go back home.
And where's home?
Home is Richmond, Virginia.
Okay. Is that where you are now?
That's where I am now, yes.
So what were you teaching?
I was teaching conversation, English conversation.
Okay.
I was teaching, it was cultural, American culture, and I ended up also teaching dance, and I taught a little bit about reading as well. So, this was a university where, learning English is paramount.
I want to ask you about the culture part of what you taught, because part of the book, probably you would need to be a woman in order to experience the differences between the way women are treated here and the way women are treated there. Can you help us understand what that was like? Yeah,
well, it felt like I had stepped back several decades to maybe the 50s, before when I was born. So, women should walk behind their husband.
Oh, my gosh.
The younger generation is changing things. But cigarette smoking is not something women should do. And if you're going to smoke, do it in the bathroom privately, because if you do it publicly, you might get spit at. Unfortunately, I don't smoke cigarettes.
Oh my
I don't spit. Yeah. And I don't smoke cigarettes. So that wasn't even an issue for me. Also, by age 30, if you're not married, you're considered a spinster, and you're an embarrassment to the family. And, those are issues that most American women do not even think about. And I mean, there's a long list as well. I mean, jobs go to men, which is a reason why getting divorced there's many reasons, but it's not a good thing, because it's not like, well, the woman's working or the woman could just get a job. No, women are dependent on their husbands for financial stability.
I'm just curious about the South Korean position on you teaching American culture, since you were teaching that. And I'm thinking the women in the room were probably really eating it up, thinking this is great. We should all move to America.
Oh, yeah.
Or were they abhorred by the idea? Did they actually like the culture the way it was?
Oh no, they loved it. I mean, after class, every time there'd be a group of students around the table, and students saying, "We want to be like you. How do we do it?
I bet.
We want to be independent." And there were several girls who were saying they're not going to get married, because getting married means not only do you obey your husband, you obey his family. So whatever his parents say, you do. So if you happen to open a business and they say close it, you close it. So whatever it is they tell you to do, you do.
You met a doctor over there.
Yes.
And had some kind of relationship with the doctor. What kind of relationship was that?
Yeah, so I ended up, something I'd always wanted to do was learn Tango, and hence the name of my book, Ginseng, Tango. And while we were dancing and then talking afterwards, we found out we had a lot in common, so we would talk after the dance, which was a common thing. And then he explained that he was an acupuncturist, and acupuncture is very common there. It's on almost every street corner, the way a 7-Eleven is on so many street corners. Yeah, very common and incredibly affordable. So with insurance, it's $4. Without insurance, it's $11. And here in this country, it's anything from $60 to $100.
Mm-hmm.
So I ended up going for a session. He invited me to try out a session at his clinic, and I did. And I have a scoliosis, which I've had since a child. And he says, my techniques will cure this. And I'd never heard that one could cure a scoliosis. So I started going regularly, and then we would also talk. Well, his wife did not like this at all. So this is another thing. Women and men should not be friends. So it's a very formal, as well as, and I was finding out, they had a very tumultuous marriage, and she had secretly gotten an apartment with her lover.
Oh.
Yeah. And so they talked about getting divorced, which, is a no-no, because if a parent divorces, that means that the children don't have a good chance of getting married themselves. It's considered bad luck. So good luck, bad luck is a big deal in Korea. So you do all sorts of things to increase your good luck. So things like making offerings to your ancestors. So the wife got very angry, and at one point she came after him with a knife and tried to kill him. And he shared this with me, and I'm like, and I said, well, call the police. No, we don't do that here.
You don't do that there. Oh, my gosh.
Yeah. Well, then she needs to, or both of you need to go for counseling. They don't do that there.
Wow.
Yeah, and then I started getting threatening calls on my phone, because she got his phone, got my phone number, and started leaving threatening calls on my phone.
Wow. And I'm assuming you can speak Korean?
No.
No. Oh, so she was speaking English.
She was speaking English. I could tell by the tone of her voice, but I also had some assistants who worked for me at the university, because every visiting professor or professor who doesn't speak English gets an assistant to do a host of chores. And at one point, I said to my assistant, "Can you listen to this and tell me what they're saying?" And their face blanched and said, "Oh my gosh, you need to go to the police. This is terrible. She wants to kill you."
So wait a minute. She said go to the police.
That's how I found out.
She said go to the police, but I thought the police didn't do that.
Well, they don't. So when I spoke to the chair of my department and said, "Hey, there's this woman who's doing this, and she's also threatening my class," so I thought, like, maybe this would be of interest.
Yeah.
And her response was, "Oh, this is a bad story, bad press to bring to the university. Don't talk about it.
Oh, wow.
If you go to the police, because you're a woman, they won't believe you, and because you're a foreigner, you also won't be believed. You will be considered guilty."
Wow. Were the sexual roles drastically different than they are in the rest of the world, or the stuff that went on behind closed doors, was that pretty much what we do here, I guess? I don't even know how to ask that question.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you one thing they have that we don't have. They have this thing called love hotels, and a love hotel is where you go with your lover, and you enjoy yourself sexually for however many hours, and then you go back to work, you go back to your family, you go back to the person who you are married to.
Really? And that's acceptable? Yeah. That's acceptable?
It's kind of odd. It is and it isn't. So everybody assumes, especially here's the odd thing: all women assume that their husbands are doing this, and you do not, don't question your husband. But where are these women coming from? So are they also married, or are they all single? I don't know. So it's kind of, the assumption is that many people are doing this. I mean, that there's love hotels in just about every major city, and multiple ones. And there's lots of curtains. In fact, when you pull into the parking lot, there's like a curtain, kind of like you see at a car wash, so that you can't even see who's parked.
Oh, wow.
The car.
What about the women? Are the women married too, or are they being paid for this?
I don't know. I think it's a combination. But so they also have a thing, instead of karaoke, they have this thing called noribang. So they're small rooms. And, you go there and you sing the songs, and I went with some of my friends and some of my students, and it's great fun. But I was told, make sure you don't go to certain ones. I'm like, well, what is it about those?
Yeah.
And it was kind of like they didn't quite answer me, but I eventually found out, well, those are the places where the men go, and you can pay for a woman to come in and do whatever.
Sing.
Wow.
Sing. You were going to say sing, right?
Sing. I was going to say sing.
You talk about the outside culture influence, like there is a place called Morrison's.
Morrison's?
Yes,
Yep.
Morrison's Cafe.
I used to love them. They have great hush puppies.
Jim Morrison. So the owner of this cafe was a lover of the Doors.
Oh, God.
And so, yes, and so his entire cafe was of the music of that period.
Really?
But with lots of posters of Jim Morrison. And so when I came in, an American, he's like, "Oh, an American, yay!"
Did you say, light my fire?
Yes, I said, light my fire.
Come on, baby.
On a personal note, are you a Christian here in the United States? And if you are, did you have trouble finding a church to go to over there, or was that just totally different, like with Confucius and all that?
Yeah, well, I'm a practicing Buddhist.
Oh, you are?
So,
okay.
Yeah, so, and so, so my practice, the primary part of my practice is meditation, which I do every day, and it doesn't matter where I do it. So when I was there, sometimes I did it in the mountains, and because it's really quite beautiful there, and sometimes I did it in my apartment. And I also went to some of the temples because there's lots of beautiful,
it's a Buddhist
temples.
country or no?
It's a Buddhist country that has become pretty Presbyterian, so it's become pretty Christian.
I knew a pretty Presbyterian once, and she didn't want to have anything to do with me. So tell me about shamanism. The only time I've ever really heard shamanism was, I think Madonna talked about it one time. What is it, actually?
Yeah.
What is that?
So shamanism, I think of it as ancient doctors, and so Korean culture is a very old culture, and so it's primarily women these days, and if you have a problem physically, if you have a problem emotionally, or maybe even financially, you might go to a shaman, and the shaman does a ceremony in which she talks to the spirits and says, "Hey, spirits, what's going on? Hasn't this woman or man, whoever is the person who's there, what hasn't this person done? What offering needs to be made? And can you tell us what's going to happen?" Shamans also do things like they bless buildings. So if you're about to build a new building or a house, you might want to hire a shaman to make sure it's not only situated properly to align with the forces of the electronic forces of the ground, but also to make sure the spirits that are there are okay with you being there.
Oh, you talk about...
yeah.
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
You talk about disappearing children.
Yeah, well, there was just one instance of a child who was abducted. So one of the things, being a foreigner, is that my students would come to my office and tell me things that no one else knows. So it was they would come to me and confess or just share their horrible stories. And one student shared that her sibling had been abducted from the playground. And, terrible for anyone to have to experience that.
Yeah.
Child was never found, but it's something you don't talk about. I mean, there's other abductions. So North Koreans have a tendency to abduct people as well. But whether that was it or not, who knows?
Well, you were lucky not to be abducted since you were a foreigner.
No, I don't think I even came close to that.
Do you know,
although I did go up north. Yeah.
I have a two-part question. I'll just ask both at once.
Okay.
Because they're related. Were foreigners cut some slack for not adhering to the cultural norms? And part two is, were men foreigners treated differently than women foreigners in that same regard, as far as not looking? What was the one thing I read about the... Oh my gosh, you're not supposed to look somebody in the eye or something?
Yeah, so we are excused. They know that we will commit faux pas. And I committed quite a number of them. And there would be, things that you didn't even realize, like, really? Are you serious? So, for instance, at one point at the university, quite spontaneously at a gathering of students meeting the professors for the year, they said, okay, and now Professor Pallant is going to speak, and she's recently here from the United States. I'm like, oh, okay, I get up, and there's a little podium, and I lean my elbow on the podium, and I stick my other hand in my pocket. It seems like a benign gesture. Mm-hmm. Well, my assistant afterwards told me, oh my gosh, that was terrible. Never put your hand never put your hand in your pocket like that. And don't lean either.
Why?
So,
what did it mean?
And it meant I was disrespecting my audience.
Oh my gosh. And
so there's yeah.
So were men foreigners treated or given more slack than women foreigners, or no?
Well, the only thing I know of is like on Friday nights, everybody who works is expected to go out to a bar with their coworkers to get drunk. And because getting drunk is when your real self comes out. That's what they think. And then you can know, do you trust this person or not? Yeah. I am not much of a drinker, let alone looking forward to getting drunk. Not my idea of a good time. So I was told it's okay, women don't have to get drunk. Like, good, I'll take it. That's a pass. I will take it.
Oh, that's good in your favor. Yeah.
Did politics come up at all in the 11 months that you were there? Do people over there speak as freely about politicians over there as they do here in the United States?
They're well, on the one hand, they're well informed about what's going on with them, and they will speak freely. And they also knew a whole lot about the U.S., more than your average American citizen, which they felt free to talk about. And I found it very interesting. And sometimes it was informed and sometimes not informed. So, for instance, they're afraid to come to the U.S. because every citizen has a gun and is ready to use it at the last moment, So they're afraid to come here. And this was, several years ago. Before all the massive shootings.
Gosh.
Yeah, it was probably what we look like to the rest of the world.
Right.
So do you still stay in touch with any of the people you got to know?
I do. So I still stay in touch with my Tango teacher. So he got his own venue to teach Tango and share Tango. I still stay in touch with a woman who took my dance class. She's now a teacher herself. And I stay in touch with another woman who was a student there and now is living in Japan. And then two of the professors very infrequently do I stay in touch with.
Is there a food that I could go get that is exclusively, more or less, South Korean?
Kimchi.
Oh, what is that? Kimchi.
Hey, what is that?
Kimchi is fermented cabbage.
Oh.
And there they eat it 3 times a day, and it's considered the thing that improves your health. I mean, it's the panacea for all things.
Did you like it?
I did like it. There's a lot of different degrees of spiciness. I like the kind of middle-of-the-road spicy. I also did not mind it on my pizza. Believe it or not, they put it on pizza. Yeah, it's with everything. And, you eat it just with rice and kimchi. And it's a probiotic, so it's very healthy.
Sounds good,
Although
actually.
they put, and they tend to put peppery spice on it, and if it's too peppery, I don't like it. So if it's less spicy, I'm good.
Cheryl Pallant, what an interesting conversation. The book is called Ginseng, Tango. I found it on Amazon. Do you have a website you want to tell us about?
I do have a website. It's my name, so CherylPallant.com. And there's samples of Ginseng Tango there, as well as my other books and all sorts. And an article about shamanism, because I ended up writing a whole article about this one shaman that I met. So I would invite people to visit my website and say hello.
Very good. Cheryl, thank you for taking time to share that with us. That was, we were all spellbound. Thank you for doing that with us.
Well, thanks for taking the time.
You're welcome. We'll be right back. Repticon presents Rep Today, the one-day reptile event in Gainesville, August 11th. It'll be at the Wyndham Garden at 2900 Southwest 13th Street. Call 863-268-4273 or go